Hello, hello.
Hello,
This is Parenting Superhero. I'm Dr. Kelly Bowers.
and I'm Dr. Mark Bowers.
And this is episode 2. Woohoo.
Yes.
And we are going to be talking today about getting your child to sleep in their own bed.
Big deal.
Real big deal. Real exciting as a
Yep.
parent.
So stay tuned, and we'd like to help you out with that.
I'm Dr. Kelly Bowers.
And I'm Dr. Mark Bowers.
And this is Parenting Superhero. Okay, so today in episode 2, we're going to talk about getting your child to sleep in their own bed. This is a little bit of a controversial topic depending on what avenue you go down. We're just focusing today on those parents who are ready for this and they feel like their kids are ready for this. We're not talking about co-sleeping or family beds or the whole attachment theory stuff. We're really just focusing on how do you do it if you're ready to do that and you want to do that. So, this is something that comes up a lot with parents of toddlers, but it can go all the way up through older kids.
Absolutely. And, sometimes it's not like we're thinking ahead and we're ready to do this like you would think with a younger child, maybe even an infant.
Right.
With things like the Ferber method, where
Right.
you let them cry it out at increasing intervals. And a lot of people struggle with that and have a very difficult time with that. Some people think it's cruel and inhumane. This is really more, I think, about those situations where we've gotten ourselves into a bit of a jam.
Right. Maybe we've developed some habits that we don't want anymore. Right.
Yeah.
So things like, we hear a lot about parents who, first of all, the process of putting to bed can become long and tedious.
Yep.
And so it might be things like we're getting into bed with the kid and laying down with them for what, supposed to be maybe a 30-second minute back rub, but that turns into 10 minutes. It turns into the mom or
Could
dad
be an hour.
falls asleep, right? Or, we say we're going to do one book that leads to 5 books, that leads to lay with me, that leads to a back rub, that leads to I need a drink, right? Or
sometimes it's, with the intention of get in my bed, right?
Right.
And let's cuddle and hopefully you'll fall asleep. And I think sometimes it really gets brought on typically by anxiety, fear.
Right.
Typically it's those kind of two things are what start to get us into this jam where as parents, we understand how important it is for our kids to sleep. It's important not only for them, but for us the next day. Because when they haven't had a good night's sleep, they're in a bad mood. And so I think some parents feel they're a bit backed into a corner.
Right. They so crave that sleep for their child and for themselves, right? That they will do, sometimes you go down this path of doing whatever it takes to achieve that. And then over time, you realize you're in your kid's room for an hour and a half each night and nobody's really getting great sleep.
And then it creates a bit of a kind of learned, conditioned response where everyone in the family begins to believe that the only way to get this child to fall asleep is to engage in this routine.
Right. And so what we're trying to do is break the routine and allow the child to feel like they have give them some confidence that they do have the skills necessary to fall asleep on their own.
Yes.
That's really important. And it's a life skill for down the line.
Absolutely.
Not only for sleep, but just getting them to understand, I can do this on my own. So it's difficult in the beginning, like a lot of things with parenting, and then it usually gets better over time. So why don't we just kind of walk through maybe what are some things that are important to set up ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of walk through the specifics. So one of the things that I think is really important to set up ahead of time is to talk to the child about what's going to be happening and the expectations, setting the expectations and setting kind of a timeline for when this will happen.
Yeah, it's totally okay to sit down with the child. And, sometimes people even go into a psychologist's office for this very issue. So you're kind of bringing in that third party if you are concerned that you're going to sort of be the bad guy here.
Right. You can make someone else kind of be the rule enforcer.
But it's really more of a negotiation. It's, this has been going on for a while, and we think that it might have been necessary at one point, but now you're getting to be a big boy or a big girl, depending on how old the child is. And I've seen cases even where kids are entering, they're getting near to middle school.
Right.
Or they want to have a sleepover and they're terrified all of a sudden because they realize I don't usually sleep in my own room. Where are we going to sleep?
And the social expectations of that then play out, right?
Right.
If you have a middle school child who wants to sleep over but can't because mom's usually in bed with them or they're usually in bed with mom, some of those social implications then negatively affect them.
Yep. So step one is you never want to do this on a whim. You never want to do this without warning. You want to sit down with the child and you want to set a target goal and a target date.
And we should say, I was just going to add on to that it is important for whoever are the parenting figures in the house to be on the same page with this. So if, for example, dad's really on board and wants to do it, but mom is like hesitant or not there yet, we need to have kind of a conversation about that as well, because it is going to take a joint force to get through it in the first little bit.
Yep. And there's so many reasons why this happens too. I mean, there's maybe situations where one parent works a night shift or one parent travels a lot, and as a result, then it starts building into habits like, well, okay, well, when mom's gone or when dad's at work or when dad's traveling, you just come sleep with me.
Right.
And then what happens then when the parent comes home is, because we're not only talking about sleep hygiene and quality for the child, we're also talking about for the parent or parents.
Right.
Because having a child rolling around, tossing and turning, kicking in bed doesn't make for a good night's sleep. In a married situation, it can affect just the relationship too.
Relations.
Right? Perhaps.
What happens in the marital bed?
Right.
Or the partnership bed or whatever. Those are important relationships to build as well. And so if you constantly have a kid in there, the boundaries get blurred.
Yep. So we want to set the stage. We want to point out that it has been happening, but now we're thinking maybe it's a good time to. It obviously helps if you are in a situation where your child, especially when they're a little older, I mean, that's what I tend to see in the older kids is they're maybe beginning to be embarrassed by it. Mm-hmm. They don't want anyone at school to know they do this, or they want to have a sleepover. They just feel like, maybe a sibling's giving them a hard time.
Right.
And they are motivated. And so then we set that target day and we lay out what the expectations are going to be. You do not need to go out and
purchase anything new.
You don't need a better mattress, a bigger mattress, a cooler bed, a different paint color. None of that stuff is really the issue here. Mm-hmm. It's really about the routine and the pattern and what is it. It's typically that we have not given the child an opportunity to learn how to self-soothe. Right. And there may be something in us that makes that difficult when our child is upset or anxious or sad. And kids, they are just geniuses at this. When those doorknob moments, when you are saying goodnight and your hand is on the doorknob as a parent getting ready to leave.
They'll say something to pull you right back in.
Right. And it can be something as simple as I need water, or I need another hug, or another back rub. But it could be, oh, by the way, this really scary thing happened to me today.
And I'm going to be thinking about that at night, and I'm going to have bad dreams, and that anticipatory anxiety, which no parent wants to see their child upset or hurt. Of
course.
Never. So that's a little bit of the parent thing too, right? Is how do you assure yourself and then assure your child that they are capable of this? And that's really what we're giving them, is instilling with them the capability,
right,
and the confidence to go forward. And again, it's such an important life skill for the kid to learn, but also for the parent to learn that you can give your kid that freedom and independence to kind of work through it.
And, in the anxiety world, what you focus on expands. And so we have to be really careful as parents is how much do we indulge these conversations. And I know that you sometimes look at it a little differently than I do. I'm more of a kind of toe the line, like, okay, maybe we can talk about that tomorrow. I love you, good night.
Right.
Your tendency may be more to kind of validate, but we have to find that balance.
Right.
Maybe I'm too extreme on my end, and maybe you are more extreme on yours. I agree. You have to validate.
Right. I agree with you, Dr. Bowers, on the...
Don't hear that often.
But make sure we get that on the board. That you do want to not... the goal is not to expand the anxiety, right? And so we're always looking as parents to kind of calm and get things back to equilibrium. Mm-hmm. But I also think you don't want to be dismissive, and I know that's not what you're saying,
right.
But we have to kind of at least say, I hear what you're saying. We can talk about that more tomorrow, because he's right. We're just adding fuel to the fire, right? If we say, oh yeah, that is really scary. That would be horrible if that happened. Then then we're giving life kind of to the monster.
And then what are we communicating then? If our response is, well, then you're just going to need to come and spend the night with me,
right?
Get in my bed where it's safe and you're protected. That's basically what we're conditioning the child to believe that needs to be done when they're uncomfortable, when they're sad or upset or worried about something, that they can't be okay unless they're with us.
Right, and so we do want to give them the building blocks to understand that things in life sometimes can be uncomfortable, and that things sometimes in life can be scary, but that they are able and they have the tools to get through that. And again, like, that's going to vary, right? A 2-year-old or 3-year-old, those things are going to be, the degree to which that is different than a 7th grader.
And if this is a nightly routine, right, where every time you're going toward the door, the child is coming up with some sort of lasso to pull you back, then what we have to do is to get ahead of it. So when we're doing the wind down, we want to start to point out, like, it seems like when I try to leave, you bring something up last minute. I want to make sure if there is something we need to go over tonight that we have enough time. So is there anything
else?
Anything you need to review from your day? Otherwise, then thoughts, what happens at night when we lay in bed, we have to get still and we have to get idle and we have to kind of try to shut our mind off. Right. And that's the idle mind is when anxiety loves to insert itself. And so a lot of kids they don't have the practice and the training, and they rely on mom and or dad to sort of talk them out of their worries. But the more that we're discussing it, the more that we're giving it validity.
Right.
So I love the example of the nightmare or the bad dream, or what I prefer with younger kids to call weird dreams. And I help to kind of teach younger kids about how their brains are developing and why these funny movies start to happen in their mind, and they're sleeping so they can't decide whether it's real or not, and it scares them. But if the child comes to alert you, if they're already sleeping in their room and they come to your room to let you know that they've had a bad dream, if your response is get in bed with me, what do you think that's teaching the child, right? Right. Is that this is how we deal with that. And then you'll get recurring nights sometimes when there's not an actual dream, when the child just wakes up and they feel like, hey, what the heck, mom's bed's pretty comfy, I'm going to go get in there with her. So our response has to be in that moment to check in with the child and see what's going on, to validate and say, oh, it sounds like you had one of those weird dreams. Let's get you back to bed. And you walk them there, and that's behaviorally signaling to them. Because what parent, if they're that terrified about their child's safety, is going to then go and sort of put them somewhere else, right? So we need to make sure that that's the response pattern that we follow. But what do we do if the child's already in that cycle, right? So this is kind of preventative stuff.
Right. So the first step we kind of talked about was set the expectation, talk to the kiddo about the timeline,
set a goal,
what that's going to happen. And again, this is going to be, variable depending on the age that you're dealing with of the kid.
Yep.
So once the expectation is set and we've got the date we're going to start this process on.
Yeah, get them excited, put a calendar on the wall, X off the days, circle the target day, whatever it may be. Sometimes a weekend can be better.
Yes, especially if, there's likely going to be a lot of trips back and forth from the part of the kid and the parent.
There may be a lot of emotion, too.
Right, and so, making sure that you have not a whole lot on your plate for the next day as a parent is helpful, so that you're not,
you can lose a little sleep if necessary, and get your game face on.
Right, exactly. So we've got the expectations set, we've done it, we're ready for the day.
Yep.
So then we want to make sure that our sleep kind of hygiene leading up to that, the process of wind down, right? So we want to make sure we have that under control. So things like what's best for the kid in terms of relaxation. Do they like to have a noise machine on? Do they like to have music on? Do they like it completely dark? Do they want a nightlight on?
Yep.
Do we have our lovey or our stuffed animal or our blankie or whatever?
Within reason, though, correct. Right? This is not hostage negotiation.
Right. But again, something you can talk about with them ahead of time. So,
Yeah. But you also shouldn't have to rack up hundreds of dollars in fees at Amazon or whatever.
No, we're talking about things that they have in their room already.
How do you want this set up?
Right.
And it may be trial and error. Why don't we try this tonight if you don't like it? So.
But again, within reason. We're not, to your point, it's not going to be a 25-minute conversation about should I have this stuffed animal or this stuffed animal.
Right.
So once we've got that set and we've got our nightly routine, whether that, brush our teeth, read a book, whatever that process is, and we put them in bed.
We have to have some rules there too.
Say our goodnight. Mm-hmm.
Like, from now on, if that has been happening, or it shall not happen from this point forward in contractual form, we can't get in bed with you.
Mm-hmm. Right. So if there's a back rub, we're sitting next to them.
The bed. Yep.
Yeah. Back rub. Right. So again, it's you're verbally telling them what the expectations are, but you're also physically following through on the expectations.
Yep.
With your nearness to them.
And then we do our routine out of the bed, whatever it may be, read the story, rub the back, say your prayers, sing a song, whatever your family traditions are. And then you say, good night, I love you, and you exit.
Right.
And then depending on the child and the age, and there's some variables here, we can't micromanage each and every one for you guys, but initially some parents like to just hang out outside that closed door.
Right. And just wait to see what, some kids, initially might come right out.
Yep.
30 seconds later, and then you can...
They might follow you. They might run after you as you're walking out.
Right. And then you walk them back into bed.
Yep.
It's the same quick... It's not a restart of the entire process again. It's a quick, it's time for bed. Here you go.
Yep.
Out again.
I love you. You've got this.
Right. Yeah, definitely make sure...
You're going to do great.
Right. That the confidence that you're showing them that you understand that they can accomplish that task.
And they may say, like, when you're not in here with me, my brain says scary things or tells me scary things. And so we may need a little bit... We don't want to get too much into it in that moment, but in recurring days, it's like, when that's happening...
What can you do?
Yeah. Do you want to keep thinking about those weird ideas and thoughts, or what kind of thoughts do you enjoy falling asleep to? I mean, I think it would be rainbows and unicorns and vacations and tropical places versus this, that, or the other that could possibly
happen. And it's helpful
happen.
if they can generate those ideas on their own.
Yep.
And then, in subsequent days during the day, you can talk about that. Oh, did you think about rainbows last night? Did you think about this?
Right.
And kind of insert those conversations so that you're not having them when they're coming out at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night.
And some kids feel like they have to tell you something at night. And for the older kids, what I like to suggest is that you keep a little notepad next to the bed, and they just jot down anything that, even if it's something they want to worry about, like something that's going to happen tomorrow. It's like, well, now's not the time for it. Now's the time for sleep. So make a note of that. And when you wake up in the morning, you can look back through that list if it makes any sense the following day. And if you need to worry about it then, let's do that while we're alert and energized and well-rested and ready to go.
Now, once you've made it hopefully past standing outside their door or sitting outside their door and you've ventured maybe back down to your room.
Yeah.
One of the things we talk about is the door locking situation in the parent room, right? So if, let's say we've had 10, 15 minutes and the kid hasn't come out, so maybe we go downstairs to get ourselves ready for bed.
Depending on how the house is laid out, right?
Sure. Yeah, downstairs, upstairs, down the hall, whatever. And then potentially that kid comes out again and now is in your room, right? And so now it's a longer distance potentially to get them back where they want to go. So if this keeps happening, one of the things we talk about is potentially getting a lock for your door.
Yeah, if you don't have one already, especially for the child who does the covert ops and sort of stealth sneaks in at 2 a.m. when you're already in REM stage 3.
You won't notice them sneaking in bed with you.
That's what they're trying to take advantage of too, is they know, okay, you may not even notice it, or you may be too tired to kind of fight back. And so having that lock, even if you don't typically have a lock on your door, for the training stage, it's well worth the $15 for a generic lock at Home Depot that are pretty easy to self-install, or find a handy friend who can do it for you, and put that lock on the door so that the child has to make some noise now. When they try to come to you in the middle of the night, they're not going to be able to get in, so they're going to have to...
Right. And then you hopefully hear them, right?
Right.
And I know most parents are trained at this point with all the, getting up in the middle of the night with babies. Then you'll meet them at the threshold and take them back upstairs, which eliminates them coming into the room, getting closer to the bed, or potentially getting in bed, which then makes it much more difficult and much more of an ordeal to get them out. So you've just kind of saved yourself a little bit of grief.
Right.
In terms of the potential meltdown that might occur.
And, to not get into lengthy conversations during that time, too.
Right, which who wants to have a lengthy conversation?
Yeah, you can say what's up as you kind of start to, move and walk with them, and they can tell you whatever's going on. And the goal is to just, again, you were demonstrating behaviorally, too, that all is well, because you trust in them enough that they can calm themselves down. It's not as scary as they think it is, because if it were, you wouldn't be
walking them back up to their room.
Right. So that's the meta communication, unfortunately, that we don't realize that we're sending when we're letting our child get into bed with us, is that there's something that they can't feel okay about or they can't handle unless they're near us.
Right.
So, and how's that going to work out for the whole rest of the day, too?
Not well.
Yeah. Not well at all.
Not well.
Okay. So, setting those goals, sometimes bribes and rewards for older kids, for every night they're in their room, they get a prize. These are instances. I'm not a huge fan of, rewards and reinforcers because they tend to not last very long. But this is something where you probably need
to get a jump start.
4 to 10 days, and you're pretty well on your way training-wise. Some kids are easier than others. For some kids, those first 2 or 3 nights are just knockdown, drag out. So you have to get your game face on, get in your mindset. You have to
prepare yourself mentally.
If you're co-parenting, you have to tag in and tag out. If there's one parent that can sort of hold their ground and cut off the emotional heartstrings that the child is tugging on like crazy, then you may assign that parent to do more of it, or one who needs to get more sleep than the other. It really just varies on a case-to-case basis.
I will say, too, I think a lot of parents are concerned about what the long-term effects are for, if their kid is really, anxious or upset or keeps coming out, and what am I doing to them psychologically if I'm not there for them, right? And I think this has been kind of, a shift in culture from probably when our parents raised us, because I don't know that it was pretty much, you're in your room, that's that, right?
We could sleep on the lawn.
Right, there was no coming out, and so I think it is important to note that you are not hurting your kid by having them sleep in their own bed.
Not at all.
I mean, the
0%.
The process by which you achieve that, I understand, can feel taxing on a parent.
Yeah.
But you're not doing any kind of damage to your kid by teaching them that it is okay to sleep in their own bed. And even in the process when they might be crying or feeling anxious, all those things ultimately are teaching them how to, as Mark said, self-soothe or cope. And so we're trying to get them to a place of healthy self-soothing and healthy coping.
Right.
And this is the way in which it
is
happens.
it is in the best interests of your child for them to be able to sleep on their own. And part of the mindset that you may have to shift is that, that you love them so much that you're going to do this, right? Is that sometimes as parents we need to tackle our own insecurities or anxieties, or maybe we did similar things when we were younger, or we're dealing with our own stress and anxiety in our current lives, and we need to be really careful about that experience isn't doing something for us as well. Maybe it feels like we need that child to be there near us too, or we're so worried for them that why not, it's just going to make everyone feel better. But if we're trying to prepare them to launch into the world, they need to learn how to do this. And just think about it for a moment. I mean, if it was such a horrible, dangerous, awful, psychologically damaging thing for kids to sleep on their own, then we wouldn't have rooms in houses. We would have a master bedroom, and that's it, and everyone would sleep in there. So when we go and look for a place to live, we look for the kids' rooms too, right? And so those rooms are not just there for play, they're there for sleep as well. And I can assure you that you are not doing irreparable psychological damage to your child. You are actually helping them and giving them invaluable life skills. And
although at the time it may seem overwhelming and can we keep going on with this, especially in day 2, 3, 4, as it's, as they're really punching up as Mark said, pulling on your heartstrings. Months later, when you're looking back on it, most parents I've talked to have reported just feeling so good about
it's great
the transition.
And the
you
kid
know.
feels happy and pumped up and independent and confident. It's amazing.
Right.
Yep. All right.
So I think we've hopefully given some good strategies for how to kind of walk through that process. And again, if you have additional questions, make sure you comment and let us know what else you want to hear.
Whatever's on your mind,
Yeah.
yep. Or if you object, or we didn't get into every little nuance of what you're dealing with, leave us a comment. Send us an email, whatever works, and we'll be in touch. Take care.
See you next time.
Bye.